Are you worried about your IELTS test? It's pretty normal. People suffer from anxiety leading up to test day. Now, in this video that you're about to see, I chat to one of our expert IELTS teachers, Graeme, who is also a long-term practitioner of meditation, something that I'm particularly interested in. In this video, we talk about anxiety and how you can learn to actually embrace it to help you perform better on test day. Take a listen. Hello everybody, my name is Jay and I'm here with Graeme, and today we're going to talk about something what I think personally they were Graeme's dogs. Let me start again. Hello everyone, my name is Jay, and in this podcast I'm going to chat to one of our E2 language expert teachers, Graeme, and we're going to talk about something that I find deeply interesting and something that I actually practice, which is meditation. And the reason we're talking about this is because I know, or we know, that a lot of you suffer from performance anxiety leading up to test day and on test day. So we kind of want to discuss some of the feelings and sensations that you experience and talk about, well, not really how to overcome them, but certainly how to deal with them, how to experience them, I guess. Anyway, I won't get stuck into that. Hello, Graeme. How's it going?
Very well. Yeah, good. Very good. I feel very, very relaxed and ready to talk about relaxing even more. So, yeah, that's great. Nice to be with you and to be speaking to a whole lot of people who are anxious about things, and hopefully we can bring shed some light on it, perhaps. And because there's always something that can be done, right, about anxiety. And so let's get into that. And perhaps you wanted to start, right, by talking about what it is and why people experience it and so on.
Let's cut to the chase and talk about what is anxiety. Take it away. Take it away.
Okay. I mean, for me, it's fear of something that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. All right. So it's not real because it's fear about something that hasn't yet happened. All right. So basically, it's all in our head, which, I mean, that sounds fairly obvious, but that's not very helpful really, because it seems very, very real. Right? Mm-hmm. But that's the first thing. It's fear of something that you think might happen, and you've probably got very good reason to be fearful and anxious about it, because maybe you've already been through similar experiences. All right. Just about everybody's had to take a test, an exam at some point or other. And some people are very good at just saying, okay, it's just a test, I'm going to do my best. And others just get lost in the anxiety and the fear.
Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting. I was certainly one of those test takers certainly at high school, where I just didn't care. I just sort of think I've done as much as I can possibly do. There's no point being anxious about this at all, because I can just do to my limit on test day, and that's that. I wasn't sort of hoping or anticipating or anything like that. In saying that, though, anxiety has certainly played a part in my life in different formats, not so much on test day. I've always been cool under pressure on test day, but public speaking was a big one for me for a very long time. I think that is for a lot of people, especially in my 20s at university. I hated public speaking. So I would have those thoughts, fantasies, imaginings, whatever, leading up to some public speaking thing I had to do, in 10 weeks' time. I would start to think about it. And I'd get the jitters and the bodily sensations and stuff. I'm just going to ask a really basic question here. What is the difference between the imagination and reality, and what's the connection there?
Well, often it seems like there's no difference whatsoever, all right? Because the reality that we think is happening is also part of our, if you like, our mental construct of what we're actually thinking is going on. And I think that's true for pretty much all our waking experiences in the world, is that what we think is what we know or think we know is actually going on is real. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And particularly when it's pleasant and we like it and so on, it's great. But then, of course, there always come times when things aren't like that. And then, we keep on referring to our thoughts and our feelings about the experience we're having, and we rely on those to give us some sense of what's going on and then maybe what we should do about it. The challenge, of course, is to say, well, is what I'm thinking and feeling about what's going on now, or what might be going on in the next moment, how real is that?
Yeah.
Okay. Am I really connected into what's actually going on? And then we go into a whole other conversation about what is reality, is there a deeper reality, and so on, which maybe is not quite the conversation.
That's what I want to have. Let's
Oh, you want to have that?
I love that conversation. That's my favorite. No, but we might get there. We might get there. But one thing I'll say there is that sometimes thoughts are just so unbelievably captivating. There is absolutely no reality to them at all, as in, let's say I've got a test coming up next week and I'm having thoughts about just the worst possible catastrophes ever. You know, it's just like, sometimes we're so cruel to ourselves, like unbelievably cruel to ourselves in the way that some of the thoughts we think are the worst possible thoughts you could possibly think. Is that your experience?
Well, or definitely, and particularly because we live in a world at the moment where we're so exposed to disaster, catastrophe, and horrible things.
Yeah.
We have a diet of that. And of course, there is this fascination that we find in ourselves for that. Not only are we fed it, we're fed it for a reason, because those who feed us through social media, etc., an aspect of what's going on in the world know that people are intrigued by this, and we get sucked into it. And look, I tell you, I have managed now for a whole week not to look at my phone for the first 2 hours of my day.
Oh, nice.
And to start off with, there was this, I'll just have a quick look, see what's going on in the world. I need to be informed about what's going on in the world. And I didn't know. And I tell you what, it has made a huge difference. Just something as simple as that, you know.
Wow. Interesting. Let's keep on this question of what is anxiety, because I'll just relay an interesting story that me personally is I about 2.5 years ago I became very interested in meditation. After talking about it for about 10 years, I decided to actually do it. And one of the things I did, I like to do things very intensively, and so I went and did a Vipassana retreat, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat where you meditate literally for 10 hours every day for 10 days. Like, you sit cross-legged on the floor for 10 hours and just, they teach you some very interesting techniques, which we might talk about later. But one of the fascinating things that came out of that for me was the relationship between thought and sensation in the body. And anxiety, certainly the way that I perceive it, experience it, is that it very much has a bodily sensation. There might be some associated thought of catastrophe, that I'm going to stutter in my IELTS speaking, I might pass out, the computer might blow up, whatever happens. But in my body somewhere, and usually for me, for anxiety, it's a very stomach-related thing, or in my throat. Can you talk about sort of bodily sensations and how they relate to different emotions?
Well, it's very fascinating, because the meditation practice that I did for about 10, 12 years or so was one in which you paid no attention to anything that was going on, be it in your head or in your body. And it is extraordinary how much you experience things that need to be itched. Suddenly there's an itch here, and there's an itch here, and there's a pain here, and so on, that you never noticed before, because your mind was distracted by everything else that was going on. And suddenly you're faced with all these experiences, all these physical sensations. And then, of course, what's very interesting is if you do nothing about them, after a while, they cease. But, okay, the but is, of course, is, well, I'll just scratch it because that'll get rid of it, which actually doesn't work. It's interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
You scratch that one, and then there's another one, you know. So,
and just this word comes up in meditation a lot, which is appearances, like phenomena, just appearing, disappearing, appearing, disappearing. And bodily sensations, certainly during these 10 hours of sitting on the floor, I experienced like phenomenal pain, like I've never felt before. But what I was able to do during this meditation, or what it taught me, was to just not resist it, not desire a pleasant one and not resist an unpleasant one, and just watch it as the phenomenon that it was. And it would come like shocking pain in my ankle or hip or something. It would come and then it would go. And what was really interesting was when you looked really closely at it, it didn't actually have a quality of pleasant or unpleasant. It was just kind of interesting. Very strange.
That's great. So basically, you were just observing, without judging, without making any assessment of whether it was good or bad, or whether you wanted to get rid of it or keep it. Right? You were just watching it.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think that is a central, certainly what I've learned from meditation. That, right, what you're talking about there is for me at the moment in my practice, probably the critical thing is, can we actually influence our emotions by thinking about them and trying to wish them away? Or can you elaborate on what I'm trying to say?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think what we normally do, of course, is that when we have an unpleasant emotion, feeling, or sensation, we try to distract ourselves by doing something, like getting drunk or going and watching a movie or scratching it or whatever it is. We distract ourselves. And I think that's a very common way of dealing with it.
Yes.
And, and it kind of works, right?
Yeah.
But what one's doing there, I think, is that basically you're saying, this is the only way in which I can deal with, we're talking about anxiety. I have to. And if you're in a situation where the anxiety is so intense, there's nothing that you can do to get rid of it, then you find that the normal strategy of distraction actually doesn't work.
Yeah.
Which is basically what we're looking at here with taker anxiety, I guess.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think with meditation practice, there's a certain level of courage that you need, or bravery, to, if there's a very unpleasant sensation, instead of turning away from it and going to your phone or going to the gym or drinking or whatever your usual avoidant habit is, to actually turn to whatever it is that is horribly unpleasant and fully experience it. And I think there's a beautiful liberation that happens when you actually just be your horrible feeling.
That's very interesting. Yeah, because it starts with you, seemingly with you thinking this is something out there that's happening. So it's not me, it's something that's happening to me, right?
Yeah.
Then, as you said, if you actually stay with it long enough, you find that actually it's not something that's happening to you. It's just happening, just as, if you like, you are just happening. You're sitting and so on. So after a while, then there's nothing to do, because it's not any longer an object that you have to do something about. It's become you.
Yes.
And you're just happy with being with you. Then you're happy with whatever happens with you. All right.
Graham's dog's pitching in. Comment from the audience.
Comment from the audience, yeah.
So here's a question, which is a straightforward question. Can we stop anxiety then?
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, I think we've already kind of covered that in a sense. We've got strategies to stop anxiety. All right. So I guess the answer is yes, in a way. And of course, in the other side, of course, no, you can't. All right.
Please go on with that paradox.
Well, I think if we refer to the kind of anxiety that we're going to go on talk in more detail about, which is the anxiety about a test that's coming up, all right, I think that it is counterproductive. It's not a good idea to try and stop the anxiety.
Yes.
Because, all right, that's not actually, and I don't want to say dealing with it, but it's not actually recognizing what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's obviously possible to stop it by taking pills or drinking or going for a run or a swim or whatever. But it's not recognizing the anxiety for what it really is. So I think in that sense, we can't stop it. You're just postponing it, all right, for the next time when it arises.
The key there is to change your relationship to it. I think, labeling it as anxiety, something I don't want, something that threatens me, something that feels horrible, to what is this phenomenon that takes place? Because it's when you stop distancing yourself from it and you stop seeing it as you say, an object, and you actually just go, all right, I'm just going to actually be, like, fully feel it. I actually try and fully feel it in my body now. Like, instead of, like, you've got the little mental story going on, then you've got the corresponding bodily sensation. I think it's nice just to sort of go, all right, I like going into the body and thinking, okay, where is this? What's happening? I'm just going to fully feel it out and not push it away and just feel it. And then I think what meditation's allowed me to do over the last couple of years of practicing it is change my relationship to negative emotions like that. They still certainly arise, but I don't see them as, oh God, I'm anxious. Oh no, this is going to not turn out well. It's like, oh, I'm anxious. This is interesting.
What it sounds to me you're able to do now, and I can relate to that, is that you actually relax around this.
Yeah.
Right? You maybe even smile at the anxiety that you're experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think because anxiety goes hand in hand with tension, all right? Tension in the body, all right? And one of the things I think that is brilliant about meditation is that it is a way of letting go of just about everything, including tension in the body, including thoughts and ideas and so on.
Yeah.
And so that if one's able to do that, and you can actually even smile or, God forbid, laugh at this anxiety and this tension, then, I mean, we know, just like we're doing so now, right? We're smiling about something. Immediately, we're seeing in a different way. We're feeling in a different way. And I think that's what you're talking about here, is about this acceptance.
Yes. Beautiful. Great word. Yes. Yeah, I think acceptance is, that's huge. I've certainly, in the students that I've met leading up to their exams, when they say, Jay, I'm really anxious, one of the things that I've told them before is just accept that you're going to be anxious, and on test day you're going to be anxious. And I think within that acceptance of it, it diminishes that really terribleness of it, and you'll still have it, but it just won't be as dire and diabolical. It's just like, oh, I'm feeling a bit queasy in the stomach and hands are sweating, heart's beating. So be it. Who cares? It's fine. But easy to say. It's still, I totally sympathize with people who are taking a speaking exam or whatever, and they've got so much riding on this. Actually, here's an interesting question, which is, do you think emotions like that actually signal to you that maybe you need to actually do something about it? Because we can't, we live in this world where we have to prepare for an English test, right? You can't just sit and meditate and think you're going to get an IELTS 8. You still need to, learn how to structure your essay and learn the true, false, not given questions and whatever. So, there seems to be something pragmatic about that feeling as well. It's saying, get off the couch. If you're anxious, go and attend a live class. I'm not trying to do a sales pitch here. I actually believe this. Go and watch a live class and prepare, because that'll help.
I couldn't agree with you more, because you're also then putting yourself in the company of other people who are probably going through the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just very fundamental, through the hundreds, maybe thousands of IELTS speaking tests that I've done as an examiner. I don't know for how many years I considered this to be part of my job, but I felt that part of my job was right from the get-go, from the beginning of the interview, was to help the student, the candidate, to relax as much as possible. All right.
Yeah.
So I flip that and I say to people who say, I've got anxiety and so on, I say, well, the first thing to do when you meet your examiner is smile and say good morning, all right? Because you are actually just being with, fundamentally, another human being who probably may even not want to be there anyway, or doesn't like their job or whatever. Who knows what's going on in their head?
Sure.
So just be basically, a human being with another human being. And guess what? When you smile, you relax.
Yeah, nice.
Now, it's easy to say that, and it's kind of quite difficult to do that when you're feeling really anxious. The last thing you want to do is smile. But I think pragmatically, you can actually practice that.
Yeah.
And it's very fascinating. I live here in Vietnam, and the Vietnamese people are delightful. They're largely very friendly, very open, but with strangers, they don't automatically smile. And so I practice walking along the street and smiling at people and seeing how many smiles I get back. And it's extraordinary how many people will just relax and smile.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
And, so I think it's just that what works at a human level. But it also, as you said, it's a practical step you can take to relax yourself as well. Of course, if the examiner also feels okay and relaxed about the relationship, then that feeds back to you.
Yeah.
And so because, there's a lot going on between you.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Okay, so I'm just going to ask a really basic question here then. What is, or here's a better one, how do I practice meditation then? What would you recommend as a practice?
Well,
or can you practice
it's
meditation?
It's a very interesting question because there are so many different meditation practices, and do I have a mantra? Do I have something that I think about? Do I have a candle that I focus on, or do I just sit? And I think it is good to understand just basically what meditation is designed for, why people meditate.
Right.
And you can go right back to, as far back as you like. So I think it's a good idea to have some sense and understanding of what meditation actually is. Mm-hmm. The challenge, of course, is who do you get that information from? Because there are lots of different ways of talking about it. Mm-hmm. So I do think because a large part of the success of meditation is the intention, which you mentioned a little earlier on, mm-hmm. is that you're not just going to sit there. Because, if you just sit there, well, what am I doing just sitting here? Mm-hmm. And there's a real paradox here because meditation in the end is doing nothing. It's all about doing nothing. And yet, of course, we live in a world where action is something we are always taking. We are always doing something. And just sitting down with the intention of meditation is doing something. Mm-hmm. So there's this beautiful paradox here. Well, actually, basically, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to meditate. Why am I doing that? Well, I'm doing it so that as far as possible, I am doing as little as I possibly can. All right? Maybe nothing. Maybe actually I'll get completely lost and find, find my body has disappeared. All right? And I'm somewhere completely else and I actually don't even know that I'm here. That would be the ultimate, right? Now, sometimes, we have those wonderful experiences. But the great thing about understanding meditation from an intellectual point of view, I've got a frog in my throat, is that it helps you in your practice. Funnily enough, it seems a little counterintuitive to say, well, we can get to a practice of doing nothing by understanding it in our heads. I think that's important because that's the way we always nearly approach things, right? We start from that. We need to know in some ways. And then we can gradually let go of all that knowing and understanding that we amassed about meditation.
Right.
And then just sit and do nothing.
Interesting. Yeah.
What was your question? So I could what was your question again?
Well, yeah. Well, what
do we need to know about meditation? What meditation is?
Well, it was sort of around what is meditation and how do I practice. I'll just tell you my little process that I went through because it was, as I said, I talked about it for 10 years. So for me, it was just...
that was very important, right? I think that was a very important preparation. It's a kind of a long time, but what
argued with my friends about it without actually doing it. Then I started with mindfulness, which is a very popular type of meditation at the moment. And there's certainly some very good apps out there. I used an app called Waking Up by Sam Harris. And I think he's a really good meditation teacher. I found that one, I liked that one because it was just very non-mystical. It's very matter of fact, almost a scientific approach to meditation, if you will, as in, certainly his approach is that it is just the observation of what is actually happening in your reality, in your experience. Like, which you might think, well, I know what's going on in my experience, but do you really? Like, there's a lot going on. Holy moly, there's a lot going on when you actually sit and watch all the phenomena take place, the feelings, the thoughts, the sensations, the memories, the imaginings, the anticipations, the whatever. It's like, whoa. And you sort of start to, an important thing that I think I did there was, or what helped me was starting to notice or differentiate or categorize the different parts of my being at the start. That was really helpful. And mindfulness is in focusing on something. So, focusing on breath or whatever it was. And as I said, I went and then did a Vipassana retreat. And then from there, after mindfulness, I got into this non-dual meditation. A few different teachers come to mind, like Rupert Spira, a guy called Greg Good, Goode. Very good. And also no woo-woo, no voodoo, that sort of stuff. Very matter of fact, but very much an exploration of consciousness, of your waking reality, your experience, but also sleep as well, like examining what happens in sleep and deep sleep and dreaming and all of these things. So for me, it's actually become like, I wouldn't even say it's really a practice. Sometimes I sit and actually, focus and do some focus work, but a lot of the time it's more sort of just an open awareness thing now, and it'll sort of just flick on. It might flick on when I'm in the office, might flick on when I'm walking down the street. Other times I'll be very much focused on tasks and very much, what's the word? Attention focused. And sometimes it just opens up. Actually, this is probably worth talking about because it's actually a really interesting thing for IELTS reading and all of these other things is the nature of attention and awareness. Should we have a go at that one?
Interesting. I mean, attention, generally, I would say, if I think this is the way it's normally used, is something that we do. We pay attention.
Yes, yes.
And so therefore it has an object.
Yep.
Okay. And awareness has no object.
Yep, that's how I'd say it too.
Awareness is just, and it's very fascinating what you were just saying about, the meditation that you now spend more time doing can happen anywhere at any time.
Yeah.
You're in the lift, you're in the office,
driving a car.
You are,
yeah.
Driving a car. And what it is, I think, is this awareness arises. All right.
Yeah.
And that awareness is not brought about by you doing anything. Right. In fact, it's brought about by quite the opposite. You actually doing nothing. All right. Stopping doing what we normally do, which is paying attention, reacting, judging, thinking, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So that for me, and it's great you've done that, because that then means if you're sitting in the test waiting for the papers to be handed out or for the screen to light up, you can be in that place of awareness. All right. And then suddenly that's a no problem place. There are no problems in awareness because there isn't anything else. It's just what it may seem like there's just you, but at a deeper level, there isn't even you. There's just awareness. And you realize that, in fact, you are awareness.
Yeah. That's it. I knew I'd take you here. That's good.
It's very practical. What I liked about what you said, and it's been my experience many times too, it's very, very practical. I don't tend to use it as a tool to help me to deal with anxiety, but it's more just like, here's a reminder of who and what I am and what's actually going on.
Right. And
what is, if I dare say, real, but real in a different way, maybe a deeper level, if you like, but what is actually, another a glimpse of, a taste of what's actually real.
Yeah, I think that was a huge realization for me in working all this stuff out, working out how the mind works and consciousness and awareness and attention and all these different aspects was, that difference between the focused attention, which is absolutely necessary, for lots of different aspects in life, we need to be focused and paying attention to something. You know, at work I do it pretty much all day, but in between tasks, just sort of letting that focus drop back in and opening up to a more spacious awareness, where, as you say, there is no problem at all, because there's no problem to be solved. There's actually no problem to be solved. Attention's very good at solving problems. When there's no problem at hand, it's like, okay, cool, I can relax here in this more spacious awareness. An interesting thing that I found was how to get to that spacious awareness place. Because, you know, as I said before, sometimes it just seems to happen of its own accord. And it seems that, I don't know, it seems to happen more regularly for me and for longer periods of time, has longer durations where I can sort of just be in that state. Mind you, I've sort of constructed a life for myself around that, whereby at work I'm very attention focused. At home, I don't have a television. I don't even have the internet at home, actually. So I've sort of set up a place for myself where I can just find myself in that more spacious awareness more and more. But one of the key pointers that helped me to find that spacious awareness was actually a question, which was a simple question, which is, are you aware? And somebody asked me this, are you aware? And I had to sort of stop, and then I had to become aware of awareness. I had to become aware of me being aware, and then that sort of like opened it up, and I was like, oh, I'm aware. I am aware. It's just awareness is happening, but I just had to become aware that I was actually being aware, and then I was like, oh, there it is. So it's a really clever pointer.
It's very good, isn't it? Yeah. Because you said a little earlier on, you know, how can I get to that awareness? Because what you realize is that it's not anywhere. It's actually right now, and at any point it's there. Yeah. And you know what it does, it really makes us question the way in which we see the world, which always we see it in a dual sense, in a sense of object and subject and object. All right, so I can see you on the screen and so on, but this awareness then and brings you into a place where you're not seeing in that kind of way. You don't see in that kind of way. And I think if you pay attention, then you find that when you are just being aware, you didn't do anything to get there. It may seem like, well, I relaxed or I let go of things and so on, or I sat and I meditated and whatever. And of course, yeah, these are tools that can enable the experience, if you like, of awareness. But effectively, there's nothing you can do to become aware because you already are.
Yes.
So this is the awareness experience is simply a recognition of what you are. Now,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, they use that lovely metaphor of the clenched fist. That you know, your hand is unclenched, and then what you've done throughout your life and conditioning and whatever is, you've contracted, you've started clenching your fist. And so you believe that the clenched fist is the natural state, and that's the state of being distracted and attention focused and object focused, etc. And so then when you actually unclench, it feels like some sort of effort's taking place, or that, oh, I've unclenched. But in fact, that was the natural state anyway. Awareness is the primary state, and then this sort of object focused, distracted, anxious, whatever, or maybe not anxious, maybe feeling something good, but all of these object focused things are the well, it's also natural, but yeah. All right. Okay, next question. This is a good one. This relates to
pretty good.
This relates to what you said before about being versus doing, which is, can I develop my meditation practice? Like, how do I develop it? Can I get better at it?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this again sounds a bit kind of paradoxical. Surprise, surprise. But yes, I think intentionality, right, determination, etc., is an important part of developing a meditation practice. Because, as you said earlier on, one of the key aspects of the practice is paying attention. all right, is watching.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to find a lot, not so much now, that if I didn't, then I'd fall asleep.
Uh-huh.
Right? Nothing wrong with falling asleep. No, you just fall asleep, and then at some point or other you wake up. Oh, and you're back meditating again. Not an issue at all. And yet, there's this subtle balance, perhaps, between paying attention, all right, just paying attention, just paying and paying attention because you want something to happen,
Uh-huh.
or because of attention, right? So paying attention really is it's like if you like, it's just awareness, really. It's just, okay, be alert. Why? Just be alert. But why am I being alert? It doesn't matter. You're not being alert because you want to achieve something or find out something or whatever, because alertness really is usually either a reaction to something or a state that we have because we need to do something. An action has to follow. Whereas here, it's this simple thing of just be alert. Or if you like, another way you can put it is just listen. Why am I listening? Just listen. All right. So, I mean, yeah, so that's
Nice.
That's really, so yes, I think intention is really important. Determination or whatever,
Yeah. I think witnessing is another term they use. Is that right?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
witnessing,
exactly.
just standing back, just witnessing what's happening, all the craziness. So, okay, how long have you been doing meditation, practicing meditation, or just, I suppose you've been being your whole life, but how long have you been practicing meditation?
Well, I guess that's a good question. I probably going back to the early 80s, something like that.
Wow.
I remember. I mean, look, I spent, just like you, I spent a year and a half in India when I was in my early 20s.
Uh-huh.
And I never really actually settled anywhere, but I had some very powerful experiences. And I listened to Jiddu Krishnamurti many times in the south of India and had all sorts of realizations. But I wasn't a student. I wasn't actually consciously trying to achieve something or get somewhere. I was just, funnily enough, drawn to go to India because it was partly the kind of thing that we did in the early 70s. That's what people did. But there's also something much deeper there, the recognition that here was a country to start off with where there is something that's been going on for thousands of years, which if you just open up a little bit, then it goes in, you experience it. And it's a very easy place in some ways to be, of course. In other ways, it's an extremely challenging place to be in as well.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how to answer the question, how long I've been meditating.
Right.
I mean, as a practice, since 1986, I suppose.
Wow. And what was your motivation to practice? Was it born from sick of suffering? Was it born from wanting to understand your mind more? What was the motivation there?
Well, mainly because my teacher at the time was primarily a meditation teacher, or at least he worked. His teacher was in the Advaita Vedanta tradition, which is basically non-dual, and so he had a very deep connection to that space of being, all right, where there is only one, there is not two.
Uh-huh.
And so he was actually a very powerful, not so much meditation teacher, but example of somebody who had themselves done a lot of meditation and it just came out of him. So often you just sit with this guy.
What was his name?
This is a guy called Andrew Cohen.
Okay, right.
And so it was part of my practice, if you like, as being a student of him, to meditate.
Okay.
How it all started. I had very little experience. Well, that's not true. I did do what's that meditation where you have a mantra? I'm sorry, I've forgotten. It'll come to me. But I did actually. Yeah, transcendental. I did some TM, back in the early 80s. And actually, that was actually really, really good.
Yeah.
But I didn't really get on with mantras, with this kind of what you referred to earlier on, is just what they sometimes call these are seed meditations. So you have something to focus on, your breath, a mantra,
right.
and so on. And yeah, so yes, it was through the experience of transmission, if you like, of this space of no problem, nothing's happening, pure awareness. That's how I actually really got started in it. But I've never found it particularly easy, apart from occasionally. Meditation, I don't find it easy, all right, which is, so it required a certain amount of determination and so on. And I found that what was very helpful was actually being part of a group of people who supported a practice. And that really made it a lot easier.
Interesting. I've never sort of done it with a group apart from that 10-day retreat. Yeah. As you know, I spent time in India too. I was sort of very interested in that. Well, that's what I read at the moment, that Advaita Vedanta tradition. There's a few amazing. What I love so much about it too is the meditative practice is wonderful, but also the philosophy is just so interesting. It's just an extremely different, diametrically opposite way of looking at the world, to the point of things that we just take as we assume to be true, like that there's an outside world, and these old teachers are saying, no, it's all subjective consciousness and stuff like that. I really like playing with those ideas. It's just wonderful and interesting.
That's right, and the assumption that to actually do anything, change anything, you have to do. Right?
Yes.
Whereas one of the masters of the Advaita Vedanta tradition, Sri Ramna Maharshi, was reported, and I don't know whether this is true, but it's a great story. He was at times, he would be so deeply lost in meditation that there would be rats eating his feet, and he had it was extraordinary. But apparently, Mahatma Gandhi visited him once, and Mahatma Gandhi, of course, was a deeply religious and spiritual person, but also an activist. Right? And apparently, the story goes, and I have really no idea whether this is true or not. He said, "Well, look, Ramana, you're just sitting there doing nothing all the time. Don't you think you need to take some action?" All right. And Ramana says, "Well, what makes you think I'm doing nothing? How do you know what I'm doing? How do you know what the effect of what I'm doing is having?" So I think it's a very, very interesting counterpoint to the assumption that we make that to change anything, to make something different, we have to act, we have to take action.
Yeah.
Which I think maybe kind of brings us into this, the problem of, if you like, a problem of anxiety and test takers. What do I need to do? And I don't know. Maybe you've got more questions before we get on to that. But
no, that's a good way to bring it back. We're touching on deep philosophical conundrums like free will, etc. But my experience is that, when I have a negative emotion pop up, I've never found using thought against thought to be effective. When one thought fights another thought in the moment, it's like, I don't think anybody wins. It's like, certainly I like what you said before about acceptance and acceptance and exploration of what's actually going on seems to be, it takes courage. And also, I think with this idea of a development of a practice and reaping benefits, I think it does take time. I don't think you can sort of meditate once before your IELTS exam and expect the next day to have tranquility and calm. It's something you have to. It's almost like a study. I've found it's almost like a subject matter. You become, the more you sort of examine your mind and examine all these things that going on, you start to understand actually what the hell's going on, and then through those understandings. I think the sort of side effect of meditation is, I think the primary thing is, for me, it's just like I like to understand what's going on. The side effect is that those those negative emotions don't seem to be so overwhelming anymore, which is nice.
It's interesting because I think you and I are quite different in one respect, in the sense that you seem to be very able to investigate yourself by thinking about yourself, by looking at what's happening and going on. And I find that very hard to do.
Right.
What I do is I do it with other people. And we find, of course, that we're very, very similar, even though on the outside we may not look like that. In fact, the same things are going on.
Yeah.
So that same exploration happens between two or more people. And I found that very supportive, which might also be very helpful for those who are feeling very alone and lost in this process of preparation for IELTS, PTE, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But actually, there's lots of other people out there. And I think that's something that we just forget. We think, this is just my problem.
I know.
I'm the only one who can deal with it, and I'm not doing very well. And I'm very, very anxious.
One of the reasons why I quit Facebook years ago is because I would see all these pictures of everyone happy at the party, and and I might have been feeling like crap. And I just thought, you do get that weird sort of isolated sense of, oh God, am I the only one suffering from anxiety or a bit of depression or whatever it is? And so I just thought, oh, that's it. I don't believe that Facebook thing, actually. I'm just going to quit it. And actually not having it there really was very helpful, because I didn't feel like I needed to conform to that. And I just sort of saw it as a big load of crap, to be honest. Very much a performance that people were participating in.
Yeah. No, absolutely right.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, it's good to chat to you about this stuff. I'll be interested to see what people watching this and listening to this think, and whether they want us to perhaps have further discussions about it, because I feel like we touched on some important things, but I feel like we can certainly go deeper into some aspects. So if anybody is still listening to this at the end of the podcast, do leave a comment or let us know if you would like Graeme and I to continue this conversation, because personally I think it's the most, don't get me wrong, I like teaching IELTS, I like languages and linguistics and stuff, but my primary interest in life is actually the investigation of what the hell's going on in life and my experience, which is also known as meditation for me.
Absolutely. No, that's very cool. Yeah. No, it's very good to talk about it. And I must admit, I'm feeling very relaxed now, having been talking about it. And I think, as we were saying a little earlier, we somehow still very powerfully believe that we are separate. We are single individuals living in a world and having to deal with a lot of other individuals and other objects and ideas and so on.
Yeah.
Whereas actually the reality is we are so interconnected. We have no idea how close we are to everybody and everything else. We are embedded in it. We are part of it. All right? We are nature. Nature is us, if you like, in the world or whatever. And so if you just let that be with you just for a short time, then you think, well, what would I do then if I let go even a little bit of this belief in the separation of me? What would be the most logical thing to do? Well, it would be to, in some way, embrace that connection and then see what happens. And who knows what might arise as a result of that. But I'm finding more and more whenever I can, in live classes, IELTS, small groups or whatever, is trying to encourage people to get in touch with other people. And we've talked about ways that we might be able to facilitate that at E2, and it's a challenge. But the more I think you engage with others and talk about strategies for listening, multiple choice questions, if you like, it doesn't really matter, or meditation or whatever, but just that connectivity. Being connected is a recognition that you're not alone and you're not the only one who's suffering, and maybe actually the suffering isn't really happening. Now that's a bit of a
it's a good one to leave it on. I love it. It's terrific.
But just to let in the possibility, all right, of that, So this anxiety isn't my anxiety.
No.
Right?
Nope. Not at all. Yep. Just an appearance, an expression.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What's fear? False evidence appearing real.
Right. Right.
I don't know why I remember that, but little
Yes.
acronym.
Yep. 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 Good one. All right, Graeme, I'll leave you to it. It was lovely to chat to you, and I'm sure we will certainly chat again soon, and hopefully we can chat on the podcast again soon.
That'd be great.
Excellent.
Thanks, Jay. Nice to get, and all the best to anyone who's listening. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you about, well, whether there's anywhere else we can go with this, because it's
Yep. Great.
we just scratched the surface, I think.
Yep. Good one. All right. See you soon.
Okay.